Alright, hello there. Welcome back to Icebeam Gaming. It's been a hot minute, but I am back with a art time-lapse. I have recently gotten a drawing tablet, actually about a month ago as of today, and I put together this for you. I will be drawing one of my OCs, Jazz, who is a red panda who just likes jazz and lo-fi and stuff. Just very chill character. Let's start off with the red line / rough draft. I do spend a lot of time on the eyes throughout this project. I end up, as you can see here, I start drawing on the wrong layer. Every artist does that from time to time. Just had to shift all the colors off of the layer. I moved the nose. That's not where it's going to end up being. I think that's closer to where it's going to end up. The eyes, I ended up not sticking with the same shape as they are now. That little area next to the eye, the side of the face, that's going to end up getting shifted a little bit as well. There it goes. And yeah, I end up shifting quite a few things in this section. It still is a rough draft. This isn't even the size that it's going to end up being. Do a little blem. There we are. I changed the size there. This is where I start fiddling with the eyes a bit more, because I'm just not that fond of it. Slight warning for the future, there will be some moments where it is going to be a bit more flashy, so those of you with epilepsy, you might want to avert your eyes when I say so. I'll try to make it known. Alright. There are a few pauses at this time because, well, when I was recording myself making this, was the what's it called? Anus Amus or whatever. That thing that Mark was doing with his buddy. I haven't watched Mark that much recently because, well, I like chill vibes. He could be a bit more shouty in comparison to my tastes, but I used to love watching him. Just not much my cup of tea anymore. Alright, well, I've shifted the eyes quite a bit. And now we're working on the book. I decided that's where I'm going to put my signature. You'll see it in a little bit. I have tried, I started trying to hide my signature in things so that I could easily identify when they're mine if people try stealing them. Because just putting it in the corner, people end up cropping it out. I don't like that. So, I just put my signature somewhere in the piece. This entire film is going to be about 1,250% speed. I have a little timer in the corner, so you can see. It took me about 5.5 hours to work on this piece. I ended up liking how it turned out. You might have seen it in the thumbnail. I haven't made the thumbnail yet. Guess we'll see. The music notes. Those I end up shifting quite a lot. Because, well, I'm not used to writing musical notes. This is more so just to signify that she is listening to some jazz or whatever. This is kind of a perspective of you walking up to her when she's in the middle of reading. She jokingly mlems. And then there's a little skull I put on the front of the book to signify that she's reading something a little bit more gothic. I do not keep those eyes on the skull. You will see me get rid of them very shortly, because they did not feel like regular skull eyes, like eye sockets. So I shift it to this. I opt for a slightly different approach. And there's my signature. Alright. End up shifting the fingers a little bit on that hand. Here is something I did not keep. I was thinking of maybe doing something like dark, maybe eldritch, coming from the book, like I did with my profile picture. However, I decided against it. It's just a book. The music notes in that music note bubble are not going to be the only music notes that are going to be in the bubble. Heck, most of the things I'm going to be putting in there aren't even notes. I have two rest notes, like notes that are no sound. I believe I have a full rest and a half rest. And then I have, I forget the name of it. The big swirly thing that is very well known, the musical symbol. And then a little C-looking thing, I forget what it's called as well. Alright, moving on to the color palette selection phase. This is a relatively short one. I like a lot of the colors I've used for jazz in the past. The picture that keeps flashing to right now is the fourth picture I believe I made with my tablet, which was entirely to experiment with abstract colors in the background and reflection. I did not record me making this, I wish I did. However, that piece took me about 8 hours, which is 3 hours more than this one took. So I'm getting faster. Slight epilepsy warning, forgot to mention. And then that piece that was a slightly less detailed was the third piece I made with this tablet. And it was of my OC of me having donuts with jazz. I believe that that was also the phase in which I came up with the name Jazz, because this is an OC I've been using for a while. The eyes. I do not keep a lot of the things I do right now. I spend probably about 20 to 30 minutes fiddling on the eyes alone. Because, well, the retina just didn't feel right, the iris position didn't feel right, the pattern I put on them didn't feel right, so I just ended up scrapping this eye entirely and redoing it after I'm done with the next eye. As you can see, I'm already shifting that one around quite a bit. Wasn't liking how it looked. And I see why when I start working on the other eye, because, well, one thing to do when you're doing art is when you're struggling with one part, move on to the next, come back to that part. Unless you absolutely need the part that you're struggling with to move on to the next part. So when you move on to a different part of the drawing, it makes it so that you have some time to think about what you're working on, what you're working with. I don't keep this, by the way. That's going to be entirely scrapped. And when you move on to something else, you might think of something or see something that you really like that you want to replicate in that part that you just did not enjoy making. So this is the way that I decided to start making it was a lot of bucket fills and building it from the background up, which I don't believe I did with this one. So I shifted a few colors there, and I started doing the background up on that one. Whenever people ask about how you get good at art, basically it's a practice thing. I always be trying new things, try out something different every time you try doing a drawing. And if something doesn't look good when it's your first drawings, don't feel bad. One of my first drawings was Stick Man. The earliest drawing I still have possession of would be a cowboy I call Stinky Pete because his proportions are god-awful. I don't even like cowboys. Yeah. Now we're getting on to a part which I would normally recommend you do against. I have a lot of open lines in this project. However, the design of Jazz has a lot of open lines. Having open lines makes it a lot harder to do the color fill. It makes it take a lot more time. However, I'm used to it. It takes me probably like 20 minutes more than it probably should. Because I leave the lines open. Gives it that fluffy feel, I feel. I'm mostly just blocking in the stuff that I could have easily closed. That was an open line there, but I did a selection. Doing the small stuff first. You'll see the struggles of the open lines a lot more in just a moment when I get onto the orange of the main color palette of the fur. Here it is. You see me chunking it in? This would be a whole lot easier if I was able to just color select. But no. I spent, as I said, probably like 20-30 minutes more than I probably should have. Just blobbing it all in. A lot of small selections, just adding to the selection. Alright, almost there. Alright, and then I start doing some cleanup. Because doing it that way, you're bound to get some stuff that's out of line. There we are. I believe I even missed like some spots when I was doing this as well, which I cleaned up later. But there were few enough after that point that it was easy. And here is how I do fur. I do a lot of small strokes to give it a fluffy feel. That's something reminiscent of my days of working with pencil, because I love doing fluffy feeling things with a pencil this way. And that was how I would usually texture things, is I would just like do quick short strokes. Very light at the end, very hard at the start. It was at this point that I believe I missed a bit of the color palette, so I'm just going to jump between this picture a couple more times. Here I decided to not bother that much with the details of the coloring because, well, there was quite a few open lines there. I just wanted to deal with them afterwards. Then I block that in. Very nice. Now it's on to the ear tufts. I realized some of my line work was not my favorite in that one, so I adjusted it a little bit. That's the entire point of a rough draft. It's not meant to be permanent. Although I do put a lot of detail into my roughs. Probably save some time by doing less detail, but whatever. I find it therapeutic to do it my way. Decided to do this ear before the other ear tuft. Heck, I decided to do both of them because, well, Easier to close the lines that way. Blending it together with my little fur texture. Alright. The inner ear tufts of the red panda. Another thing about my brushes in this is I use a lot of the behind layer brush so that it only paints behind, not over. That way I don't have to worry about putting the color onto colors that I already wanted to be solid. That way I could draw behind the fur tufts. Working forward backward, which isn't really a good painting technique, but whatever. I'm not a painter. In traditional art, I'm a drawer, a sketcher. A lot of rough drafts with a pencil. For a while I even inked them, but then after that I just ended up liking the feel of a pencil more than ink. Doing a little bit of cleanup there. I realized there that I didn't blend the fur on the cheeks. And I believe I stepped away for a moment there. Chunking the arms in there. Lovely stuff. And then we're moving on to the earphones, the headphones. All the line work for them is the same color, because, well, it's a very similar palette throughout the entire thing. I realized there that I forgot the finger pads, little toe beans. Added them in. Now I'm coloring up the earphones so that they are nice and smooth. Get them ready for the next step, along with everything else. Realized there that I did not like how the headphones looked. They looked like they were a bit too thin on the old headband part. And moving on to the book, I'm going to give it a very Necronomicon feel. So I went with a very dark shade of brown-gray. I never use solid white or black in anything, because having an off color feels a bit more natural. Also, any small mistakes I leave, because in nature, nothing is perfect. There's always going to be a slight dent or something, even with faces. I don't believe I canvas flipped at all in this one, which I usually do, to try to get the faces to be as close to symmetrical as possible. But in real life, faces, while they may look symmetrical, they might not be perfectly symmetrical. One eye might be ever so slightly bigger than the other. One side of the lip might be ever so slightly higher than the other. Stuff like that. There's my signature. Lovely little thing. Making a little bit of gold binding on the book, making it feel a bit more rich. There's the music notes. Or at least the start of them. A lot more effort's gonna go into those. There's a full rest. And here's that symbol I forgot the name of. I'm not a music guy. I used to be honors choir, but I never even read the notes. To be brutally honest, I'm better at playing it by ear. Move that over. Didn't feel like I meant to be up there. I realized here that I hate how I draw regular notes. That's a half note. So I got rid of it. Then there's a half rest. I move it. There we go. And I start shifting the notes because I didn't like their positioning. And also changing the sizes a little bit. Because they felt a bit too chunky. I ended up not going with the double line sort of thing because, well, I felt it didn't look that good. Kept it with just one. A very simple look. Adjusted the tongue a little bit, realized I didn't like how I adjusted it, moved it back to the original. And there's the background. Decided to go with a simple background, make it look like she was in the diner seat that I've used in a previous drawing. There's that drawing. I was using it mostly for a color palette reference. And on to lighting and shading. I do a lot with multiply layers and such because, well, I feel like they make it easier. You don't have to worry about colors as much because you just block it in and it adjusts the colors for you. And it's a very destructive approach to shading because you have to remove the shading, work it backwards. That's what I'm trying to say. And I start using a brush that I hadn't used before, that I ended up liking the feel of it, made it feel very painty. It is the blending brush. And shading, by the way, is gonna take about an hour or so in this recording, I want to say, because, well, I put a lot of effort into shading. Colors and line work took a lot longer. It took about like 2.5 hours. I end up adjusting the layer sometime soon to make it a bit more intense lighting. Almost like there's no lights on inside, and it's a intense sunset. Which, considering the layout of the diner in the previous image that I drew, the third one that I ever drew with this tablet, I technically would not be able to get lighting like this at all, because there were buildings across the street, and those buildings would obstruct the sunset. I will also adjust the tone of the color, because currently it's a very bluish tone. I will adjust it to a dark red orange, more like, to make it feel a bit more sunsetty, and also match the fur patterns a bit more. Very warm feel instead of a cold color for the shading. Epilepsy warning. I do move a lot. And there will also be a lot more epilepsy warnings very shortly because, well, I'm going to be adjusting several shading layers. I liked how intense that looked, so I stuck on it for a few moments just to see it. And there's that orangish shadow. Felt like it suited it a bit more. There are a couple things that I might go back and do. However, it's a finished piece. I'm not gonna actually do it, but I want to go back and do it. I would be adjusting the fur towards the back of the head on the left. I felt it was a bit too round looking back at it after I was done. I like it to usually be a bit more spiked out fur, but it still looks nice. Then I lighten up the area around the skull, make it look like the skull is glowing a little bit. Alright, epilepsy warning. There we are. Almost. There we go. That's the one. I swiped my brush quite a few times, and it took several minutes to finish the stroke. Because it was calculating colors for so many different pixels. And it took forever. What I did was I did a lightning layer. That was a intense blue-white. And I shifted it down a bit in the locations that the light would not be directly hitting. So it was a very smudgy looking multiply layer, but it was a multiply layer nonetheless. I realized here that I made a mistake in the shading on the book, and I fixed it. And now we're moving on to the finishing touches. Here I decided that the bubble was a bit too oblong, and it was moving into the top corner a bit too much. I decided to make some faded bubble looking things. Some circles. I changed the color of that one to be green because it makes it pop more with that lo-fi feel, because I do love me some lo-fi. Give the tongue a little bit of shine. Start adjusting the chin a little bit more, making things pop. Another thing that I would adjust if I was to go back and do it now would be around the lip. I'd make that pop a bit more, maybe with some undershadow. But that's already done. A couple little diamonds. And I believe that's just about it. Yeah, I believe that's where I saved. I only saved twice in this project. It took me about 5 hours, 40 minutes. And yeah, that is all I have for you today. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's very much appreciated, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.